You probably have gotten a lot of advice on breastfeeding. I've been breastfeeding for almost 18 months now. Pediatricians usually are not certified lactation specialists. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Kirsty. I am a pregnant mom. I'm in my third trimester preparing for my second home birth. I share home birth, breastfeeding, holistic nutrition and wellness, things like hormonal balance and eating properly for you and baby on my channel. I wanted to make a whole separate video on this because I feel like there's just so much to unpack, and if you're a mom or you're currently pregnant or have told people that you want kids, you probably have gotten a lot of advice on breastfeeding. Breastfeeding is such a personal journey, and I feel like there are a lot of people who are women who want to breastfeed and don't know where to start, or certain challenges arise, and it can be really overwhelming and confusing just navigating online knowledge and asking other people about their experience, who's the right people to talk to professionally. I've been breastfeeding for almost 18 months now. Our daughter's 18 months. And I'm in my third trimester. I am planning on tandem feeding and just figuring out that whole process with a newborn baby and our toddler. So I wanted to make a video on the lessons I've learned so far, almost 18 months breastfeeding. One of the most common things that we tend to ask ourselves is, are we producing enough milk? I know at least myself and other women who in the beginning, when their baby is brand new and they just gave birth, and they worry about if their supply is enough because baby doesn't seem satisfied after feeding, or because baby is struggling to latch in the beginning. And I would say most of the time, yes, most of the time we are producing enough milk for our babies. Our bodies know what to do for our babies after we give birth. It's a physiological process. Birth is a physiological, natural process, same as breastfeeding, so our bodies know what to do. And same thing with producing milk. While you're pregnant, your body is already producing colostrum and getting ready to feed baby. But there are other problems that arise. So for example, in the beginning it can be hard because baby's just learning how to latch. Sometimes you might have like a shallow nipple or inverted nipple. I know my midwife told me that I had that after I gave birth. So it was a learning curve for both myself and my daughter with breastfeeding. For one, definitely try to get access to a lactation specialist. I say this because, for example, you go to your baby's pediatrician appointment and it'll be like, oh, baby's not getting enough or is missing certain markers when it comes to weight, etc. Pediatricians usually are not certified lactation specialists. They probably get their own little bit of knowledge from their own experience or from their own schooling, but they do not have formal training on lactation. So that can be really discouraging, especially when you go to the pediatrician and you feel like, oh, they said my baby's not gaining enough weight, etc. And then they usually recommend supplementing with formula. But definitely reach out to a lactation specialist in your area. Some people do an online consultation first and then a home visit, so there's definitely resources out there. And then two, I would say trust your intuition. So I always say that people who breastfeed, who have difficulty breastfeeding but continue to do it, it's for two reasons. They either had the resources and support, or two, they had grit, and sometimes it's a combination of both. So when I say resources and support, they reached out to a lactation specialist, and then they had support at home, meaning like they had their husbands do other duties like clean the house and things like that, so it didn't feel overwhelming while they were trying to breastfeed their baby. Feeding your baby is a lot of work, so having that type of support and help is really helpful. And then two, just grit, because it can be really frustrating and overwhelming and get confusing with all the different types of advice. So having that really deep desire to want to feed your baby yourself is huge. I would say it is good to pump, and this is different for everyone. Some people have to go back to work, so pumping is really important in their breastfeeding journey if they're not switching over to formula. A lot of times we start pumping too early. I would say I even started pumping too early with my daughter. I started pumping like maybe, I think less than a week into her being born, while also putting her to the boob. So it was a lot of work, and in turn I produced almost 700 ounces of breast milk extra that I had freeze dried because it was taking up too much room in the freezer. It's nice to have an oversupply, but it's not necessary, especially if you're going to be the one primarily with your baby. And it even is just enough to start pumping once a little bit before you start going back to work, and then pumping at work to bring home for baby. The reason why I say be careful with pumping too early is because engorgement is an issue. I've been engorged maybe 2 or 3 times, and it is painful. It's really hard. Like, obviously put baby to the boob so they can help with the engorgement, but also sometimes it's really severe, and some people have to go on antibiotics or have other ways of relieving the engorgement. Set boundaries and set the environment for your desires when it comes to your breastfeeding journey. So when I say set boundaries, making sure that whoever, whether it be your husband or your partner, whoever is home to help with you, they understand what your duties are. So say that's primarily feeding the baby, and then trying to split up tasks so that you are able to, one, especially in the beginning, figuring out how to latch and comfortable positions with the baby, figuring out their hunger cues, and then figuring out what your support system can help with. Your breast milk is on a demand and supply type of deal, so as long as you're emptying out your breast, or whether that's to your baby feeding directly through your boob and or pumping, the more you're going to continue to produce. So some people are exclusively pump and are on a schedule. What is hard about that is sometimes you can miss a pump, and well, missing one session of pumping doesn't significantly change your supply, but over time, if you keep missing like 1 or 2 night feeds, that does change your milk supply. So just keep in mind that your breast milk is on a supply and demand type of system. And then the last thing I want to talk about and say is that, like I said, your breastfeeding journey is personal to you. It's uniquely yours. So as you keep breastfeeding, you're going to hear things like, oh, why don't you cover up? Like if you're in public, if you live in the US, and then even in the Philippines, you have full public rights when you're breastfeeding, just so you know. Or people be like, oh, why don't you give them a bottle? Or, oh, it'd be easier, I could watch your baby if you gave them a bottle. And just know that you don't need to do anything that you feel isn't necessary for you and your baby, that you're not comfortable with. And what you're doing is an amazing thing. Breastfeeding your child takes so much time and effort, tears, whatever, and it's your specific personal journey. So overall, it's a difficult process, but it does get easier over time. You get more comfortable, your baby learns how to latch better, and you both get into a routine of breastfeeding and different positions like sleeping while breastfeeding, etc. And those things make it a little bit easier. What I've learned in my 18-month journey is get support, get help from professionals, especially early in the beginning, so that you don't get discouraged or don't feel like you need a supplement right away. 2, set boundaries, set your environment. 3, don't pump too early, and make sure that you have the right pump flange size. That can affect your milk supply or just make it hurt. And 4, just know that your journey is personal and specific to you. I hope that was helpful. I feel like those are some things that I wish I knew before I started breastfeeding. My mom breastfed my siblings and I, but you know, over time some things are just forgotten, and it's easier to just have immediate knowledge and support like this somewhere. So hopefully this was helpful. I definitely want to talk about my journey as after I give birth and what tandem breastfeeding is like. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of lessons and learning curves in there, so definitely going to be documenting that in some way. And yeah, so thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Like I said, my name is Kirsty. I make videos on motherhood. I share my home birth experience, breastfeeding, holistic nutrition and wellness for mom and baby, and just lifestyle. So thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.